Welcome to the Play Their Way podcast, where we talk about all things in child first coaching. I'm your host, Laura Jane Jones, and today I'm excited to welcome our special guest, Dave Reed. Welcome, Dave. Great to have you with us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, and thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
Dave Reed is a Partnership Development Manager at UK Coaching and coach of Rockcliff Girls Rugby team. Dave, I feel like I should be doing a one of us chart because, as I've said, you work for UK Coaching, one of the organisations part of the Children's Coaching Collaborative. And secondly, you're a rugby coach, my sporting area of special interest. So I reckon we're going to get on like a house on fire today. I'm going to have a great chinwag. So I know you'll be on message with Play Their Way, but taking your UK Coaching hat off, why do you think this structure, this strategy, this concept is so important for the future success of children's coaching?
I think first and foremost, it's about giving the children the rights to choose their own journey. I know that's sort of one of the pillars, but if I go back to my coaching back in the day, there was no choice. It was like you did what you were told to do. Now I think it's really, really important that we give the kids the choice to explore their own journey, explore their own feelings and thoughts of what they think their sport is about. Not just rugby, but very much in my sport, rugby union, we'll often have little huddles where the coaches won't get involved, and we'll go and solve that problem. Go and solve that. How are you going to score more tries? How are you going to stop them scoring more tries? How are you going to speed up your line defence? How are you going to, attack from the backfield? And let them go and think about it. And that's really important, I think. Is part and parcel of their journey. If we don't do that, we're just going to end up with a lot of robots.
Putting your UK coaching hat, or I should say scrum cap, back on, how much is this reframing the future of young people's sport?
I think it's always been in the background somewhere. It's just been, we needed a project to get it out there. We've talked in rugby union for a long time, and other sports have talked about being child first coaches, talking about child first rugby, child first cricket, and we've wanted to live and breathe it, but we've never really had the resources and the mechanisms behind it to really kickstart it. Now there's all of these resources on the Play Their Way hub. There's people like me and others advocating what they should be doing, what we should be doing as coaches, sorry. There's also, people like me challenging a little bit and sort of saying to other coaches and other people like, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And, this has worked for us. That might work for you in that situation. So, yeah, I think it's a really good time to be involved in UK coaching and Play Their Way in kids sport. And we talked a little bit off air on, how many kids could now potentially get the opportunity of being full-time athletes or full-time sports people. It's not just a dream anymore. It's reality if they want to go and reach out and get it. And I think if they're allowed to make some more of their own decisions, they'll find the path a lot quicker.
As a coaching development manager, how much has this changed the landscape for coaches, this child-first approach?
To a degree, I think it's really excelled a lot of people's knowledge and learning. We have had to drag some others through the hedge, shall we say, kicking and screaming, but we're getting there. And certainly, there's it's probably nearly 100 girls on the pitch on a Tuesday night when we're coaching at Rockcliff, and you can see them all having fun, having input, being coached by really good, knowledgeable coaches who are probably invested in the kids, but also invested in their own learning as well, because I think that's really important. The RFD do some great courses. They put some great courses on around, Northumberland and the rest of the country. And I can't stress, importantly enough, how they can shape you as a coach. It's not necessarily about the content of what you're coaching, it's about how, what, why, when. They're the sort of things that coaches really need. So yeah, it's getting there.
Let's go back to those kickers and screamers, those cautious adopters of Play Their Way and a child-first approach. What is it, do you think, that holds some coaches back from this?
I think the thought of failure, and the thought of not being recognised as probably a coach of a certain stature. I don't think for 1 minute that if they actually took the reins off and adopted a child-first approach, they wouldn't enjoy it any less than what they do now. They probably enjoy it more because ultimately the kids are getting a voice. And one thing that I often say about my daughter playing is she finishes school and she probably has 20 opportunities to go and do different things. And I think she goes to the ones where she has the best coaching. And I'm not just talking about coming to Rockcliff and me, because that's probably not as good as she thinks it is. I think it is, sorry. But she goes to cricket, some great coaching in cricket. She's done football, she's, athletics, she's done, all of it. And she's gone and found places where she enjoys going and where she's had good coaching. And I've seen some fantastic coaches, and I've always applauded the ones that have really engaged down there and said, look, you should actually bag that and sell that, what you've got there, because it's brilliant. You've got those kids totally engaged. And I think that's really important.
At the heart of Play Their Way and the 3 pillars of voice, choice and journey, the big thing's enjoyment. We want kids to be getting the most out of it.
Yeah, totally.
Are coaches having more fun when they adopt this model?
I do, yeah, because I see some crazy stuff, that, where they're laughing, they're giggling, they're enjoying themselves, but they're also learning through each other as well. One of the things, this is a really good example, I think. One of the things that I often used to say was stop it, something like that. Now I have adopted the right, you're on a 10, let's have you down to a 5 sort of approach. Because I don't want them to really stop it. I want them to still continue it, but in a more tamer way, shall we say? You know what I mean? Or I'll say, they'll go off and they'll have that 5 minutes crazy time where they run around chatting to each other, find out what's going on, and I'll say, right, press the switch. You know what I mean? And it's just little things like that, and then they come in and they're all active and ready to go. But I think if people adopted the approach, they would have more fun. Coaches would have more fun. The players would definitely have more fun. And more importantly, I think as well, we've got a lot of parents that watch and they see stuff on the side and they see their kids enjoying themselves. And again, the parents are always going to want to bring a kid back to something they're enjoying. So if we can create that, it's a really good, shall we say, 3-dimensional picture. Kids enjoying it, coaches enjoying it, parents enjoying it. Win-win, happy days.
I've got one for you. On that 5 to 10 on the dial, instead of the speedometer, could be the readometer.
Could be the readometer. We could go with that, but I think my daughter might actually cringe at that one. I think that one might be a 1 too far.
Well, you mentioned your daughter, and you've mentioned that she plays for Rockcliff Girls Rugby, who you coach. One thing I'm always intrigued by for male coaches in the girls and women's rugby space is what they learn from the other side of the aisle, if you like. How much with this child-led approach have you had your ideas and perceptions of the sport well, but with a different group, changed?
That's a really interesting question, because I don't see there is any difference in terms of how I treat a group of 14-year-olds to the males to a group of 6-year-olds who I often love coaching when we have our summer clubs at Rockcliff. I think they're great. I think everybody should be treated equally. We discussed a little bit about that. And I think it's really important that girls are treated the same and treated equally. They are definitely more curious, very, very curious in terms of wanting to learn.
It's not so much of an issue with groups of girls. They ask a lot of questions.
They ask loads of questions. Ever since I've coached girls and, back at Northumbria University and places like that, they always want feedback, always want to be able to ask questions. And, I probably got to take the hats off to them, because that's helping them learn. Helping them learn so much. And again, speaking to the parents, how many of them actually watch rugby with them? Loads watch rugby with them now. How many of them will actually watch the men's game? How many will watch a women's game? How many will watch a Southern Hemisphere game? All of them want to watch rugby. I was talking to a parent the other day. She said, "Yeah, Ivy will watch 10 games a week. No problem. Whereas I'll watch 10 games a weekend. You know what I mean? But and I love that. I love that they're interested in it, and they'll come and they'll ask you stuff. I mean, 10 minutes before kick-off and they're asking you to do a nice sunny Bill Williams out the right hand or left hand. It's not ideal. We say, can we practice that in training first? Because if it comes off, it's going to look amazing. But if it doesn't, it's somewhere in the hedge across the way.
Never turn the cap, the sky and read on it.
No, never turn.
This reminds me of a conversation I had with an international rugby coach a few years ago now. He was coaching one of the Sevens sides and he's a former rugby player himself. And he said that he would find that the girls would ask questions as soon as he told them what to do. So he'd give them a drill and they'd ask why they were doing it. And sometimes he had to take a moment of pause and self-reflection because he didn't even really know, because that's just how he'd played rugby.
Yeah.
Is that something that changes with girls?
Yeah. We ask a lot of the girls what they want to do. What do they want to work on? What do they think their strengths and weaknesses are? And they'll sometimes develop their own little game plans in the games. And again, we'll have little minutes of reflection where they can go and just sort of stand on their own and say, well, actually, that's not working. We should try this, or that's working really well. Or we might actually ask them if there's any sort of restraints we can put in or constraints we might put into the games. Say if one of the girls are scoring tries left, right and centre, what do we want her to do? We want her to support a little bit more and give other people opportunities, so you might only be able to score in a certain area or things like that. That's the sort of stuff we like to do. But most importantly, we always try and get them to come up with some ideas. They do their own warm-ups. They'll always do their own warm-ups. They play some silly little games to start with, their own warm-ups. They choose from a number of little games. Most of them have shall we say, they have a purpose in the next game we have, because we try and always make everything as purposeful as possible. And but 9 times out of 10, they're solving their own problems. And I think in later life, I think that's going to help them loads.
That's a really interesting thing you talk about there, that they're self-organising through warm-ups and the fact that they're playing games there and then, because it feels like one of the biggest step changes from when I was a teen playing sport, in that fun and free play was saved to the end. It was reward for a good session.
Yeah.
How much does it improve things when you get off on the right foot and they start with fun at the centre of everything?
They're just so much more switched on, Yeah, you're probably like this. I remember, my sport and sort of stuff was exactly the same as that. You know what I mean? All the fun bit was at the end, and you were desperate to get to the end. So the end couldn't come quick enough. But I want it to be all the way through, and the coaches that I work with want to be all the way through. We don't want it to be like the last 5 minutes of your swimming lesson at school, where you got to go on the diving board for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? And there's a queue a mile long. You got one go. We want them to have multiple goes all the way through the session, and that only comes from them and how much they buy into it. And if you make it fun and you kick it off with fun at the start, it goes right the way through.
How alien does it seem now as a concept that fun was a reward once upon a time in kids' sport?
It's bonkers. It's completely bonkers. It's like, and I think about coaching as well. I got into coaching because I wanted to have an opportunity to pay back. And was my early thoughts around coaching fun? I wanted to make it more fun than I had, but by looking at it now, it's completely different. I can take a structured session and unstructured session and mash it all up, and it doesn't really matter as long as I've got 20, 30 smiley faces, having fun, running around, learning stuff, being curious, asking questions, building friendships with their mates. That just didn't happen in my early days.
Rugby itself as a sport has gone through huge evolution in recent times in terms of number of girls participating, but also the way we coach and teach the fundamentals. How easy is it, therefore, to coach an ever-changing sport landscape with this new strategy and outlook?
the framework's always there. You've got your catch, pass, run, tackle, all of that's sort of there. It's just about inventing or co-inventing, more importantly, games that make it happen. And little skill drills as well, because they're really important. But not making it, like repetitive, robust. I mean, the amount of times as a young player and as a a player that you run up and down a line, catching and passing with no opposition. We played against opposition on a Saturday, or a Sunday or whatever. We didn't play against nobody. So you want them in front of people. You want them to make decisions. You want them to look at that. And it's a little bit sort of early because they're only 14 to talk about like skill acquisition, because they don't understand it. But the way that I explain it is, look, they're your obstacles. You've got to get round them. How are we going to get round them? And they get that because it's really important. Another thing that I use is like ultimately, if we want to solve a problem, it's like, and you get your first box of Lego and you open your first box of Lego and like you want to build everything red, but everything's yellow, green, blue, purple, orange. But you then go looking for the red bricks to solve the problem, But realistically, you could have built something in half the time with just loads of different colours. And what I mean by the different colours, there's lots and lots of ways that you can actually go about things and solve some problems.
How much do the girls take that on and start owning it? How quickly do they start owning that themselves? Is that something you have to teach them, or is it a case of I lead, you follow? How does this work in practice?
I've done it with this group of girls for nearly 3 years now, so they get it. They totally get it, and they'll look at some of the other coaches that are coaching, and like they'll look at it and go, like, not necessarily at our club, but maybe he's in a different club or different sort of like county or something like that, and they'll go, what's going on over there? We're just getting on with stuff. Like, I'll go off and say, right, go and sort that out, go and, do your warm up, everything like that. And like, over in the far corner, you might have like, this regimented sort of system going on, and like they don't understand that, and I don't want them to understand that, because that's not free play. That's not that's not their journey, that's not their voice, it's not their choice. They choose at the end of the day, and I want them to choose all the way from now until they're finished on the rugby journey with me. And then if they want competition, they can have competition in games. If they don't want competition and they just want fun, they can have fun in games. It's, what is competition? Competition's running from the dead ball line to the try line, and whoever wins. Or competition might be, well, I'm not going to drop any balls tonight, and if you do it, I'll win.
Do you think there's a problem in a sport like rugby that by its nature is so structured? We've got a law book that's thicker than most other sports, and we've got a rule for everything, even though we're not meant to call them that. Do you think for some coaches that ends up being an excuse, that they can't introduce free play and that they can't allow a right of expression and freedom of expression for players because of the nature of the structure of the sport?
I think they hide behind it. But I also think that it comes down to whether they want to be vulnerable or not. And they want to actually, give it a go. Like we talked earlier, you've got to drag them through the hedge. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with a few coaches where they've actually come through the hedge and went, wow, this is a different place. This is like, this is Acapulco, I was in, somewhere else, and now I'm in heaven, It's like, and I have seen it happen, and it's light bulb moments. But I think some people are nervous of it. Some people are, they probably coached the way they were coached and are comfortable in that and think that was all right. But like I say, there's so much learning out there that you can do to take you to different places. It's worth a little experiment every now and then.
It's interesting you say that people coach the way they were coached, because I think there's almost two schools, isn't there? People who were coached badly and want to move the needle themselves, or people who are coached badly, but it's been so baked in, they continue to coach in that way. Because of the way that we're giving children self-determination, and we're encouraging, I should say, not giving self-determination, do you find that your girls are coaching each other within those settings now? that they're starting to lead because that's what they're used to. And we are creating a new generation already through Play Their Way.
Yeah, and it's very evident. And like, if they like get scored against off their score, the talking and the self-organisation behind the posts or on the way back from their try line, the opposition's try line, how good that feels or what they've got to do differently to stop it happening. They're coaching themselves all of the time, and that's what we want. Yeah, I mean, as a coach and as a group of coaches that I work with, we do have to have input, especially around things that are safe and making sure that they stay safe. But ultimately, we want them to see their own mistakes and put them right themselves. And I'll always say this to like whichever team I coach: "Can I? Far too old now. Can I come on the pitch with you? You've got to make the decisions yourself. You've got to sort it out yourself. Coaches can't come on the pitch now. It's up to you." And I see coaches go on the pitch and I go, let them learn themselves. Let them learn. Let them solve their own problems. The more that you're backwards and forwards on the pitch, the less chance they've got of actually solving their own problem because you're giving them all the potential solutions. But are they actually going to listen to you? They've just been scored against, or they're just in euphoria from scoring. What's actually going to go in? Very little.
In those moments, though, when you do have to step in, how do you do that without discouraging their voice, without them thinking that they've been silenced, so that they know that they've still got a voice in that space?
I think the best way to do it, and it's something I've learned, is stand back. Stand outside of that circle, the huddle, their inner sanctum, shall we say, where they're all chatting. Listen to what they're saying, and if they solve the problem themselves, what's the point in a little bit of white noise from the coach? Let them have that, and But if you can see something really obvious, it's more a case of, have you thought about that? Have you thought about the other? Not do this, do that, do the other. Have you? And then, you might see this little conversation going, yeah, it could be hanging, could be in there, like that. And it might happen, it might not. But so what? You've given them the opportunity to think about that. And if they've gone away and thought about it and done it, brilliant. If they haven't, they might actually do it again the next time or the next time if they make the same mistake.
For you then, is this not about giving them the answers, but giving them a toolkit to find those answers themselves?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, you're writing a toolkit, a set of accessories, a set of, just things that they can help them out. Stuff. They love the word stuff. I don't know, they want stuff to help them. Sometimes they don't even know what that stuff is, but that's what they want, And you're like, look, have you got any stuff? Like, to help us do this? Have you got any things that can help us do that? What about some stuff that can help us in that line out? What about, and you just think, yeah, we can do that.
Gone are the days of the magic sponge. That was the magic stuff.
The magic stuff, aye. Yeah, the magic stuff.
Dave, what's your favourite thing about coaching?
I like just to see people tread fairly, honestly, and just for the kids to have fun. I'm honest. I'm really honest here. Like, there's the 14-year-old. The most important thing is that they build friendships, have friends, have fun. Have a bit of food afterwards and a bit of crack. Hopefully, a hot dog. And just build memories. Build memories of what sport is like, and hopefully have better memories than I did as a junior sports person, and better memories of coaching, and also I would love to be able to go talk to them in probably 10 years' time and say, what does voice, choice, and journey mean to you now? You're at university. What voice have you got at university? Or you're in full-time employment. What voice have you got? What's your journey been like to get you there?
Do you talk about those pillars with them? Do you give them the verbals that we're using here so that they know what their toolkit is, so that they know that we are talking about their voice, choice and journey, so it's something that they're tangibly aware of?
I think because we've used it for a while now, they talk about it themselves, like the leaders in the team, they've got some great manners. Please, thank you. Come in and listen, please. you know, and like it's not come in and listen, you know, it's like come in and listen, please. Get your head in here. None of that. It's and like you see them and they're comfortable with it. They're comfortable with the language. They're comfortable with making mistakes, and they're comfortable with also winning and losing. It doesn't really matter. They win gracefully and they lose gracefully, and they've got a great habit where we created a tunnel as players and clap each other off. These create a pyramid, and the girls all go under it, and they scream and shout at each other, and and all hug, pat each other on the back, and everything like that. And that's just brilliant. So going back to your earlier question, just seeing them happy and seeing them enjoying themselves is probably the most important thing for me.
I love hearing this stuff, but we're probably a little guilty on this podcast of overlooking those more challenging moments in the coaching space. When have there been times where you haven't been able to stick to play their way, or perhaps you've beaten yourself up a bit afterwards where you feel like you haven't?
Pretty early on when I was adopting this process, there would be times that I would get a little bit frustrated, and I would question whether or not it is the right thing. Again, it's a very fine balance between the winning and losing stuff. We want our kids to win. We want our kids to win and enjoy themselves, but we also want, we have a rule in our game, which is the half game rule. Everybody has to play, and we are determined as a club that we follow that rule, that everybody gets at least half a game, and sometimes I used to think to myself, well, is that really fair on some of the girls that are developing? Do we need to hold them back a little bit and put them into an easier game, or do we just actually throw them in at the deep end? I think, to be fair, throwing them in at the deep end's done them really, really good. We've got some fantastic players coming through who have developed over the last couple of years, who we probably did throw in at the deep end, got some resilience, got some fight in them, and now they're absolutely supersonic, so messed around with my philosophy around that a little bit. And also I think when we started the contact stuff, there was a lot of, I wanted to give them more probably autonomy to go and try some stuff, but it wasn't safe. And a lot of the times it was just bring it back a little bit and probably dumb it down a little bit so they understood it, and then now they get it. You know what I mean? They go off and they get it completely. But there was a couple of things. Probably that half game rule, winning and losing. Is that person safe going to go on there? Is that person not going to be safe going on there? And also, the safety bit around the contact. I sort of questioned myself a little bit as to how much I was going to have to step in and say things.
Has there been a trade-off for you between competition outcomes and wins and draws versus less tangible, obvious outcomes of your team? Have you had to take a few losses on the chin along the way to develop better athletes, or is this team still a very competitive team with these pillars of play that way?
There has been a couple of knockbacks. There has been a couple of knockbacks for the team, but it also depends on them as well. They're a set of very young, enthusiastic 14-year-old girls. Sleepovers play a big part on a Sunday morning when half of them have been and had a sleepover and they're not quite in the zone. So getting them in the zone is quite interesting. Late nights, plays a part. So ultimately, we have to understand that they have lives and they do stuff. I think, to be fair to them, they respond better to that now. They know that probably Friday night is better for a sleepover than a Saturday night, and parents are starting to agree with that now, and that's important. But there's certain things that we have to come together on a Sunday, and we've just got to accept. They're growing up. We're not going to have them all in the number one place on a Sunday every week. You know, some people are going to need a little bit more G'ing up than others. Some people are going to, you might have to actually calm them down a little bit. You know what I mean? They might have had a really interesting weekend and hyperactive, you know, but it's just learning about the person that's in front of you, you know, and that's so important. You know, we've got 28 to 30 players, and I probably would say that I know pretty much all of them, what their personalities are like, what I can get out of them, what I can't get out of them, and that's only because I'm curious about them, and it's about developing them, not just them as a rugby player.
How do you deal with, when coaching girls in this age bracket, those friendship politics that come into it? Is that something that bleeds over into training sessions, mornings, game days and stuff like that?
To be fair, we haven't had any at the minute. I mean, they're only 14. They're very, very good together. They're a good group of friends. You know, we've had a couple of little niggles where they've had, you know, a couple of little spats, but they've dealt with them really well. Within 5 minutes, they're best mates again, hugs, you know, everything all right, you know. I mean, to be fair, sometimes say to them, you're just a little bit too nice in training, really, you know. And then, you know, but they're great. They don't really fall out that much. I mean, again, my daughter's phone, Snapchat, WhatsApp, I mean, she must get 50, 60 messages an hour from these girls. You know, they've got their own little group and everything like that. You know, Sunday morning, like, you know, I get more questions about the time they're starting training and everything like that. And I say, oh no, I'll just give you the list of the answers on a Sunday morning, and you can just tell the girls what's happening, you know?
Well, that's actually the thing that I wanted to pick up on lastly. So for a lot of grassroots coaches who are listening, the reason that they'll be involved in these voluntary coaching roles is because they will have their own offspring, their own child in the team that they're coaching. How much of a benefit has it been to you having your daughter there and those journeys home in the car where you've been able to tap into her feedback?
I get a lot of feedback. Yeah, some good, some indifferent. But yeah, sharing the car back, and often we'll have a walk and a talk, or we'll get home, and if it's a nice night, we'll do some, you know, just chatting in the garden, passing the ball. I'll ask her a lot of questions. It's really important that she keeps me current, you know, in terms of, you know, stuff to say. I mean, I do become the embarrassing dad quite a lot because, you know, that's my job. And I think she secretly likes that. I do. But it is important to have somebody like that that you can rely on to chat to, find out what people are feeling, what people's thoughts are on different things. So she's also a very good sounding board for the rest of the girls. She cares for them all. She really, really does. So if anybody's having a bit of bother, she'll make sure that they're all right. Or if she needs to tell me anything about that, she'll tell me, and we'll sort it out together. But yeah, it's important to have like her as my sounding board, and yeah, our feedback can be interesting, especially around like, you know, things that like, you know, why did you make such and such do the cones tonight? Why was such and such on bibs? Why was this and that and the other? You know what I mean? And like, I don't know. I just pick people randomly on that. It's nothing personal, you know? I
might tear up as one of our next podcast guests because I know that I'm going to get to meet her during the Rugby World Cup. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to get the feedback directly from the horses.
She'll come and pester you at the Rugby World Cup. She will. She'll say it. Yeah, she'll do.
Dave, I can't finish this podcast without mentioning the Rugby World Cup. You've said you've got tickets to the final. I know there's going to be a karaoke stage there. What are we going to set together?
I mean, it's got to be Fog on the Tyne. It's all mine.
Okay, I was going to go more maybe Islands in the Stream or something, but we'll workshop it between now and then.
Well, we could do two.
Perfect.
You know what I mean? We could do two. You know, we'll just be greedy.
Thanks for your time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great pod.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great. Thank you very much.
And thanks so much for listening. Make sure you recommend this podcast to a friend if you've enjoyed it. Follow Play Their Way on social media at Play Their Way on TikTok, X and LinkedIn, and at Play Their Way UK on Facebook and Instagram. See you soon.